Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. My name is Jared Lee, and I'm joined, as usual, by my lovely wife, Jamie Lee. So, Jamie, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Jared. How are you?
Well, I'm actually, you might notice my voice sounds a little different. We're having to re-record the intro part of this episode because, for unknown reasons, we recorded, at the regular time we normally do. And there was something wrong with the recording where it makes it sounded like an old, the old records that had, it sounded crackly.
Yes, it was a crackly sound.
It kind of sounded like we were in a 1940s radio show maybe. So figured that probably wouldn't be the best sound. So we're recording this in the morning.
Pretty early.
I haven't had coffee yet. I don't know really how this is going to go.
Well, we're just doing the intro and the outro.
Yeah, luckily with editing, you'll never know. But so we're just redoing. We're redoing the intro and outro. So that's how it's going. But it's good. It's good. The episode was fine. I was going to say the thing we did talk about was we did go to SeaWorld.
Yeah, we went to SeaWorld last Friday with a school field trip for our daughter, and it was fun. Like, we had a good time, but I think it was one of those things where we realized, one, it's a lot more expensive in some places than Disney is. Even.
Well, I was gonna say the thing that shocked me was, well, I shouldn't say shocked because we've gone Disney's expensive. Disney and Universal are expensive.
For sure.
The case, but theme parks in general are expensive because it cost almost $40 to park at SeaWorld for just regular parking.
Yeah.
Which that right away, I was like, what? And then day tickets, if you look at them, which we didn't pay that much because it was a discounted rate for school stuff. But day tickets are basically sometimes more expensive than both Universal and Disney. Yeah. And the food was more expensive. Like in terms of they had their own little food festival thing going on. Which, theme parks are not cheap. I understand that. And we've talked about before in the past, and when we go back to Springfield, AA, Springfield Cardinals team there, the Springfield Cardinals, you go there, the food there is way more expensive than you're paying theme parks and same for concerts. So it's just interesting because, I wasn't expecting it necessarily because I've been to SeaWorld one other time. But yeah, it's I think the beers started $14, $15, starting price, which is again, not that it's cheap in theme parks, but usually in theme parks they start around 10 if you got something. But yeah, it was an interesting experience, but I'm good with not going back to SeaWorld for a bit.
Yeah, we saw the dolphins, we saw the sea otter, the sea lion show, and then the kids were like, can we go to Sesame Street Land? And that's where they wanted to spend most of their time that day, which is fine. They're young and that's what appeals to them. Our daughter's at a weird age right now where she's not quite old enough for the thrilling roller coasters that go upside down, do all the twists, all that stuff. And she's getting a little too old for the Sesame Street stuff. She's getting to that age. So it's just in between here. So I don't know. We'll probably hold off on going back for a little bit unless we just want to go ride that new Penguin Trek roller coaster that's going to be opening this year. I don't know. But
so that one that's like a family coaster that could be good. The thing about it is if you like roller coasters, they've got lots of roller coasters.
You're set.
So, for me, isn't the park necessarily for me? The animal stuff's cool, but it's a different park, but I'm glad we did it. Yeah. But we're not going to be starting a SeaWorld podcast anytime soon.
No, so. Being there, honestly, made me oh man, I appreciate this that Disney does that they don't do, and this and this and this. So I was I kind of was oh, okay, well, thank you Disney for being how you are.
Well, I think
in certain ways.
I think definitely you get into a class of theme parks of Disney and Universal, and then there's kind of everybody else, and I kind of feel that's the way that a lot of times it goes, which it's fine, but that's kind of how it was. But we did that, so it was experience. We didn't really film anything there. We just kind of did it and all that stuff. But yeah, we're not. Like I said, we're not going to talk about SeaWorld today. We actually have a lot of stuff we're going to talk about, and we have some friends coming on the show. So a couple weeks back, we went on the Orange Grove 55 podcast with he goes by OG and George the Italiano. Well, we brought them over here to hang out and talk about some of the things today, including the DAS pass changes that were just announced, some of the rumors about things that be coming to Magic Kingdom, I guess Animal Kingdom as well. And we also talk about, I kind of did some math on how much it may cost to replace the monorail system at Disney World, because if you've been on it anytime lately, they're older. They're getting older. They've been getting older for a while. And the trains that have been there since 1989. So we talk about how much that might cost, and do we think Disney will actually pay it and replace them?
Yeah.
So that's some stuff we're going to talk about today. But before we do that, just want to remind everybody, if you're watching us over on YouTube, over at CTM Podcast, please like this video, subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to us on good old trusty podcast, so wherever you're listening to podcasts from, just ask you please subscribe there and leave us a review. We greatly appreciate it. And if you want even more content, be sure to check out Club 32, which is where we have additional content and live streams like Cool Kids Kitchen. We have the Club 32 show we do every Tuesday, where we just chat with everybody on a live stream again every Tuesday. We're getting ready to reintroduce a version, I guess, of what everyone refers to sort of as Diz Dudes, but it's going to be a rotating group of people that come on once a month and chat with members about various topics regarding parks and things like that. So looking forward to that. That is unnamed at this point, but that's coming very soon. We have in-park live streams. You get 20% off of CTM apparel and 1901 Candle Company products, music loops, private Facebook group, all sorts of things. So if you want to check that out and you support the show, go over to ctmvip.com. We have monthly or yearly options. If you do a yearly, you also get a free t-shirt, and you can also do a free trial if you don't want to try it out as well. So again, ctmvip.com. And we get asked a lot, if you want to support the show, that's the easiest place to do it, because you get the most interaction and more stuff back. So there you go. All right. Well, before we get to the news, I suppose we should introduce our guests. So we've got some friends hanging out with us while we go over some news and a little discussion portion. So we have Orange Grove 55, which we were on their show a couple weeks ago. Had a great time. Figured let's have him over here hang out with us. So OG 55, we're just going to call him OG. And George, I believe George the Italiano, correct?
You got it.
Got it. Okay. Welcome to the show. Feel free to introduce you guys selves and where people can find you. And we'll hit the news after that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you for having us on. We had a blast with you both on our show, so it's great. Yeah, it's great to be here at Capture the Magic. Yeah, you can find the Italiano and myself at Orange Grove 55 on YouTube, also on Twitter and on Instagram. I'm kind of new to Instagram. I'm kind of like an old fogey with that. I'm still kind of learning my way around Insta, but YouTube is where like our home base is. We do a lot of content about like theme parks, even the studio side of things. We talk a lot about Marvel, the MCU, Star Wars, all that good stuff. And we even dive in a lot to the corporate side of Disney with the Bob Iger, the proxy war and all that stuff. So yeah, a pretty eclectic mix over there, but it's Orange Grove 55. And again, thank you for having us on.
Of course. And George, where can they find you?
And then if you, as everything that OG had said, and then if you like to find me on my other platforms as well, you can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Disney George. You could also find me on Instagram under the Disney Italiano. And of course, as he said, you can find me on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with my segment of Citrus Corner, where we dive deep into Walt Disney World and the Disney Cruise Line for all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
There it is.
Love it. Thanks for coming on. We would many times we kind of changed. I used to go really into the corporate stuff as well. And then our show basically focused on like just theme park tips and stuff. And I was like, okay, I'll be back. So I've actually had the idea of doing a separate, which I think I will eventually, like a separate show that's more of the corporate stuff. Because the proxy stuff was fascinating to me. But if you're just looking for theme park tips, you're like, I don't care about this whole thing. And I'm like,
I know. Yeah, when we did the proxy, it was like the OG 55 marathon. It was.
Oh man, yeah, there was some. That whole thing was. Yeah, it'll probably still be going, but we're not going to talk about it today. We've got actually a lot of stuff news-wise to talk about, including some stuff to the DAS system and some rumors. And then we do have I kind of stumbled upon this idea, but we're going to talk about the monorail system and maybe what the future of that can hold. At least on our end pertains to Disney World. OG, and you guys might be able to talk about how it might pertain to Disneyland. So, all right, the first thing we're going to talk about is there were some changes that Disney announced to the DAS system, which is Disney's Disability Access Service.
Yeah, so they announced this on Tuesday, I believe. And changes are coming. So these are going to start to take place May 20th at Walt Disney World and June 18th at Disneyland. And we don't have all the information yet. But from what we understand is that they are really trying to crack down on the overusers and the abusers of the system, because we kind of find out through all these like different places saying that it's tripled in use in 5 years. So triple the amount of people use it since 5 years ago, which kind of makes sense with Genie Plus, and that 60% of Lightning Lane, people that go through the Lightning Lane are DAS pass people. So just a lot of people use it, and I think they're just trying to cut down on, again, the people that are abusing the system and just don't really need it. But yeah, it's interesting because they're making some cuts. So what do you think about what they're doing?
Well, it's been a known issue for a while that they're abusing the system. I've seen it firsthand. I've seen stuff where, and I think I think toward the end of the year they had cracked down on the third party tours that were some of the reasons they cracked down on them was they were basically telling people how to get DAS. They were telling everybody if you have IBS, you can just tell them that you can get it and things like that. So I think from a standpoint, now I understand this topic is touchy because it's like, while you're talking about this subject, this isn't a personal thing against anybody, but people who have disabilities, it becomes a very personal topic to them.
Right.
So it's one of those things where it's going to be unpopular, but I've heard upwards of 60%
that's what I just said.
the Genie Plus stuff is people using the system. From a business standpoint, if they want Genie Plus to operate better, they want guest satisfaction and get people not to wait his line as long, they kind of have to tackle this, because if they don't, it's not going to just fix itself. Now, some of the details, I don't know. Like they said, there's a whole thing about how you can get out of line and get back in line. How's that going to work? I don't know. My guess is people will, you're already hearing people not be happy about it, but at the end of the day, people will probably adjust to it. But I think there's probably going to be some bumps in the road if I were to guess. But what do you guys think? You guys think this will be smooth sailing, or do you think there's going to be some...
I think there's going to be bumps in the road, but I think it's necessary, because out here in California at Disneyland Resort, there's absolutely abuse going on. Absolutely. So I think it's like a two-pronged kind of thing, right? I think Disney sees the abuse, and they're legitimately trying to correct that abuse because it is rampant. At the same time, they understand that the abuse is also stealing money from them, because they just introduced the Genie Plus's paid fast pass Lightning Lane situation. So if people are like using every little ailment or whatever, or even making stuff up sometimes to get the DAS pass, well, that's cutting from their Genie Plus Lightning Lane money, because those people don't need to get that. So I think there's a financial interest on Disney's part, and I also think that there's just a look. The abuse has gone too far, and we have to address it. Now, from what I understand, it's going to be a third party doing this, and not Disney.
It's sort of, I think, now they're not doing what like Universal did. So Universal brought in, I can't remember the company, and they completely took over all the decision making in terms of approving it and not approving it. Disney's situation, from what I can tell and read, is, was it Aspire Health?
I think Inspire. I think that's what it was.
It seems to me that they're using them sort of maybe taking the, I guess, on the fly decisions away from cast members. So I think a part of this wrinkle too is a lot of people told us that a lot of times cast members were just giving out DAS to people not even asking. Yeah. So I'm thinking you also had people that were, not that I'm accusing people that need it, but people that don't need it are cheating the system, and also cast members are handing out too much. So you've got this whole influx of people using it that don't need it, and they're trying to just weed it out on both sides.
Well, and now you're going to have healthcare professionals who understand medical conditions and what have you. I think that helps too when you're trying to divvy these out. And from what I understand, they're also going to, like you were saying, they're going to have certain things where, like, depending on your condition, you might have to wait in the regular line, but you'll be able to leave the line and come back. So
I'm sure that's going to work.
That's right. Logistically, I do have questions about how there has to be checkpoints.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to kind of play devil's advocate on both sides. And because I am one that has used DAS before. Now, there was a time, like once upon a time, I didn't even know what DAS was. And there were friends and people, including cast members, that actually, based off of a conversation that I would have of my condition, they say, hey, you could be eligible for DAS. Give it a shot. And I said, well, what's DAS? And they said, it's the disability access service of what it's supposed to be. Yeah. So I was like, okay, so I was eligible for it, but I was going by everything because I'm an open book. I have nothing to hide. I told the cast members at guest services exactly what I have, and they said, okay, you're eligible for DAS. So the cast member said I have the green light to go, so I used it. Now what it's looking like to me, based off of the description of how they're changing it to what my conditions have, it would seem like now I am not eligible to get it, which in that case, I am perfectly fine with it. If Disney and this third-party health system feels like that I'm not eligible for the straight DAS, but I'm eligible for something else, that's perfectly fine too. Where I'm playing devil's advocate with it is not necessarily for myself, but in the sense of the rocky road that I think it's going to be is it's going to end up hindering people's health conditions that may not show, in a sense, where I feel like that they're going to get a lot of backlash to what people have to say or not say about their own personal things. I think that's going to be a lot, and I think that's probably why cast members don't really ask too many questions, because it is a touchy subject. You're battling on the lines of the HIPAA laws, and it's like you're put in an awkward position to say, okay, you want this pass, so okay, so what do you have? It's kind of like.
And I wonder too, you mentioned HIPAA law, George, and I wonder if that's why Disney went with that third party, because they're a medical, organization, so they can deal with HIPAA more appropriately than, say, just the cast member. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's very much covering yourself there, because I don't think Disney wants to be in a spot where they're determining medical things without having.
So my concern is just for the people, because they said they're more so gearing towards for like neurological, or like with the autism spectrum. That's what the main focus is for the DAS system now. But there are going to be other things, such for me, that's more physical, that they could have other options, such as this, I guess what they're calling it, like a Q pass, that you can get in line. But this is where I'm getting confused, that if I have to leave the line, that's perfectly fine. I'll oblige to that, but it's like, okay, but then what's the process for me to get back in? Do I go back to the same exact spot? Do they have a separate line where they kind of hold you into a queue for a queue? It's like, if you have to get in touch with a cast member, what if you're in a spot in line that you have to make an emergency exit? And so where's the proof to say, hey, I have to leave the line because of this condition?
Yeah. I've got a lot of questions along those lines too. Like, logistically, are there checkpoints, especially in the lines that, those older ones that the queues are very tight and they squeeze around? Like, how does that play out? And I'm assuming they're going to address this further. But obviously, how this is going to work. But I agree. I think I wouldn't be shocked if there's more changes, more things are included as time goes on, because I think they did, and I don't know if we forgot to mention, but they did basically mention like autism and those, like, especially for the kids. I think it's one thing they wanted to make sure of, like, being, because it's Disney World and Disneyland, being very kid friendly.
There are adults with,
for sure.
Yeah.
But I think it's one, like, it's a touchy subject no matter what. But I think at the end of the day, you're battling with, in an ideal world, if people have disability, hey, yeah, go right ahead. But obviously we live in a world where people are going to abuse it.
Oh yeah.
And then Disney kind of always does this, where there's a loophole, it gets found out. And then you're seeing TikToks and Instagram reels where people are talking about how to exploit this and just tell them you have X, Y, and Z and you can get this pass. So once it hits that level, they're forced to do something. And unfortunately, when that happens, like, and I can't personally speak to it. We've never used DAS. We have listeners and friends that have had to use it. So I don't know the ins and outs of the system, but it's unfortunate if they are having to go through extra hoops to get it. But I guess at the end of the one, devil's advocate on the other side could be, if they do fix this issue, it potentially should run better for the people that do need to use it. And then for, like, Genie Plus runs more efficiently. And like you were saying, like, Disney wants Genie Plus to be better for people that are paying for it. But at the same time, they also want the standby line to be better, even for because those are still paying customers. They're just not paying as much. So I think all in all, they just want this stuff to move more efficiently and trying to not waiting until it becomes an even bigger issue.
Well, and two, and yeah, most definitely, despite them going to have a rocky start, because, all stuff like this
for sure
is going to have to get the kinks out before it becomes smooth. But I am glad to see that Disney is taking the proper measures and steps to get this resolved, because when you have 60% of people in the Lightning lanes and in the Genie Plus lines that are all DAS holders, as opposed to the Genie Plus, there's something terribly wrong there. It's like on Sesame Street. It's like one of these things just doesn't belong here. It's like, but and it is true. It does hinder the experience for Genie Plus for people who are paying for that premium service or an individual Lightning lane, because what it essentially does, you're putting the DAS holders in with the Genie Plus, that essentially there's a mark in the line where you then merge with the standby people. So you're having 3 different groups merging into one line at once. And then that's where everything gets bottlenecked. And that's where you end up having, for example, Peter Pan's Flight, and you have a line all the way out by Cinderella Castle.
Yeah. What were you going to say?
No, I was going to say that the 2 ways I think will be impacted the most in preventing the abuse is the fact that, especially with Disney World, I know you guys at Disneyland are different. You'll actually have a physical location on the day of where you can go get it. Whereas Disney World, it's all virtual. Like, you have to do virtual chat only. And I think that will cut down a little bit on the people who are just like, well, I don't want to go through that.
Right.
Just like,
you also can't get to the day of either.
You can get day of, you just have to do the virtual chat.
Well, yeah, correct.
Which is going to take time. But and also the fact that they cut it down from 6 people to 4 in your party. So there's less people, except for immediate family members. But yeah, I think that's 2 ways that maybe cut down a little bit.
Well, it's less incentive to just get somebody to get it and then like get if you're in a friend group and things. I mean, like, I agree. It'll change. There's going to be some rough sailing with it. But unfortunately, it's like if they let it go much longer, it would just imagine this problem 3 years from now.
Well, and Disney doubling down, there was people asking like the Q&As on like the forum page, and they said, if caught with falsified illnesses, that you will be banned for life at all domestic Disney parks.
I saw that. I thought that was I was going to bring that up too. Yeah, that's an interesting little wrinkle. Now that gets very, how do you prove that? But at the same time, it's a very strong language to be like, don't even attempt to.
And I do think Disney is more so kind of utilizing that, to kind of, I don't want to say like play like their poker bluff, in a sense, but it's like when people hear, permanently banned at all domestic parks, like no matter what, it can kind of give the abusers that option to say that, just to say if they are caught, they can't come back at Disney because it's in the fine print. And I think it's funny too that in the description that they mention there are security cameras all over the parks. And I think that's interesting. I'm trying to figure out like how that correlates.
Yeah, I guess it's like disability fraud. If you say you can't, like those people that get caught with like they're on disability and they were in like a Viking throwing competition and they're like, well, whatever.
I was going to say too, that's also probably another reason why they're doing this third party healthcare professionals, because let's say someone comes in, they're like, for example, like I have liver disease or something, right? Just and I can't wait in line because I don't know. But a healthcare professional will be able to look at this person and kind of give them a little bit of a scan, and they can kind of see they're medically trained. So they'll know if you're kind of like, you're not exactly on the up and up with how your eyes look, your skin, things like that, where a cast member will be able to pick up on that stuff. So they might have, being medically trained will help them kind of weed out the people that are kind of faking this or they're, because the healthcare professional is going to know if you're not, if you don't have what you say you have, and or at least for the most part, without getting too invasive with the testing, but there's signs, physical signs for certain things that a healthcare professional would be able to spot that a cast member wouldn't.
Yeah, and I think the one they're cracking down the most on is the IBS, because apparently that's the thing that a lot of people were just saying, like, because again, like, how do you prove that one? But they were saying those are the ones where they're in line, you can get out of line and get back in line, so they're kind of removing that. But I also liken it to like when you're talking about like websites and conversion rates. Let's say for someone to buy something, they got to go through like 6 steps. Every step they have to go through, you're going to lose sales. If you get that down to 3, you're going to get more sales. I think the more little obstacles they put up, like, saying, hey, we're going to ban you if you're lying. You add these little like, I don't know if it's worth it. which will cut down on the amount of people that would even potentially would defraud it. And then you have this ideally situation, this third party that can help weed those things out. So I don't think Disney thinks they're going to completely rid it of complete fraud, but at the very least, you're weeding it out and lessening the burden on the system. And I think that would, we'll see how it goes once it launches, which it may be a mess for a little bit, but probably will be. But we'll see how that goes. But I think that probably their end goal there is just to sort of do that.
When we got our alarm system set up at our house, the ADT guy told us 9 times out of 10 that the sign in the front detours most of the crime. Usually a burglar will look at the sign and go, not worth it, we'll go next door where they don't have this, right?
Nope.
Same idea here. The rules in place and this, that, and the other, threat of getting banned will probably be enough to kind of weed out a lot, like you were saying, a lot of the fraudulent stuff.
Yeah.
Hopefully, yeah.
I agree there. All right. Well, let's move on. We have some, I think this would be more fun topic here. There were some rumors. Now, these rumors, we've heard some of these before. There's no source for this. This comes from Mickey Views, Braden over at Mickey Views. He had released some rumors that are, I would say, juicy. To say that to least there. So one of them, we've all heard about the Beyond Big Thunder Mountain potential expansion. So the thing that he had said was a rumor here was that there could be a Woody themed attraction being considered for the Magic Kingdom at Walt Disney World. You want to read what he kind of wrote here?
Yeah. Again, sources, we don't know what they are, but Woody themed attraction is under consideration, and it would be with the rumored Radiator Springs Racers project. So Radiator Springs, Woody attraction, Big Thunder Mountain, and it would be like a Western section over there. The concept art I think this is what was in Toy Story Land, wasn't it?
So part of this rumor is there was a rumored Woody's Western area that was going to be part of Toy Story Land that was scrapped, that this might be brought in over there. And then there would be potentially a villain's land where basically like Tom Sawyer Island is and things like that. He just, I think I don't know how accurate he is on these things. I think in the past he has been, but again, I'm sure Imagineering is many times like an idea comes up, it may happen, it may not happen. But I thought it was interesting because we talked about last week on our show how the Frontierland Shooting Gallery was going away, and it was going to be a DVC lounge. I kind of think Disney is going to move away from Frontierland. I think it's kind of rather obvious with Tiana going in over there. Probably Pecos Bills is all but gone. And they've also hinted at that it's going to become like a Tiana place. My whole question was, and I asked last week, what do they do with Big Thunder? And this seems to be maybe a way in which they do that, as they turn Frontierland more into a New Orleans area, and then this Beyond Big Thunder doing what Disney does as well, bring a popular attraction to another park, and that. So along with the things I talked about with probably Animal Kingdom as well, I don't know. What does everybody think? Is this a good thing?
So, okay. So do you mind if I take this, OG?
Go for it.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So here we go. Now, whether or not, and now Braden said in the very beginning, these are just rumors from his sources, not knowing like how accurate they are, if this was something in talks or what have you. So I'm just going to go by just the projects themselves, whether how accurate the rumors are or not. I personally feel that if you're going to invest in what they're calling the biggest expansion in Magic Kingdom history, to then take an attraction, not even the land, just the attraction. You're not going to get the whole Cars land. You're not going to get the town of Radiator Springs off of Route 66, Flo's V8 Cafe, the Cozy Cone Motels. You're just getting Radiator Springs Racers, an attraction that came out over 10 years ago. And then you're going to put in around Tom Sawyer Island a section that it was supposed to be part of Toy Story Land, that was part of Disney's Hollywood Studios. And then you're going to connect it with the villains. For me, I just feel like it's just all over the place. I personally feel like to have those two kind of Pixar IPs into that area, it just doesn't fit Magic Kingdom for me. Not saying that Pixar couldn't fit in Magic Kingdom. I just feel like that so much of Pixar has already been established into Disney's Hollywood Studios. It's like, and again, if you're investing that much money, I want to see something fresh. I want to see something new. Now, to your point of like what's going to go on as far as for Frontierland goes and for Big Thunder, this is my personal opinion. The one section, like right before you come to Tiana's Bayou Adventure, where Pecos Bill is, that section is going to become like that New Orleans style little area and street. From where Big Thunder is, where the bridge connects to where Tom Sawyer Island is, that'll run all the way through to Country Bear Jamboree. That is going to be Frontierland, just that strip. So you have Tom Sawyer Island in the middle, you have Big Thunder, you have Country Bear Jamboree, and then you have the bridge that connects them. That's basically going to be the strip of land that's going to be for Frontierland. Now, will that be for very long? Only time will tell, but right now, I can't foresee them fully getting rid of Frontierland just because they're still keeping Country Bears and they're updating that. They still have to keep that sort of Frontierland style quality. Now, as far as for the villains go, everybody knows I'm a huge advocate to the villains. The villains need their land, their section, where have you. Now, there are talks that it is possible that the villains may go into Hollywood Studios. At some
Villains
point.
Lane has been a rumor for a better part of a decade about it.
But because I'm a huge advocate of that, and I've said it many times on Orange Grove 55, I've said if they're going to do the villains, they cannot give us no hand-me-down, like diluted Candy Crush version of the villains, so to speak. Like I want to see the villains in their entirety. I want to see like that dark kind of edgy, OG kind of refers it to like a darker version of Fantasyland.
Yeah, like a twisted Fantasyland. Like Wizarding World kind of has that darkness, but magical, that kind of vibe would be pretty cool. Here's the thing this is the thing with Frontierland. I don't know how it is in Florida, but out here in California, we kind of have some Spanish influence in our Frontierland. We have a Zorro Mexican restaurant. That in Frontierland, they celebrate the Dia los Muertes. I'm probably mispronouncing that. I do apologize.
That's pretty close, actually.
Pretty close, right? But they celebrate that in Frontierland. And I think that in my opinion, instead of doing the Cars attraction with the Woody thing, what I would do is I would go maybe more into that Latin Spanish vibe to kind of reimagine Frontierland in more of that direction. Because then you can kind of go into more like Coco and things like that. I agree with George. I think that, look, they've hyped up the Beyond Big Thunder thing so much now with these expos and like withholding like a lot of this information. It's like Blue Sky, like What If, to kind of go in there and give us like a Cars Land Light and a Woody ride and things like that. I think it's underwhelming based on how much pent up hype now that is behind it, because it's like everyone's wondering what are they going to put back there? What are they actually going to green light? And then it turns out to be kind of a clone, and it's not like quite as vast as the one at California Adventure. Also, I would agree with you, George. I think that the Pixar thing, fits better probably in like a Hollywood Studios kind of park. Yeah, I mean, technically I know Coco is Pixar too, but I think that could work. Coco kind of seems a little bit like a Disney property to me for some reason, but overall I would go in that more Spanishy direction and kind of I would steer clear, no pun intended, of the Cars thing and the Woody thing. I just don't think it's a good match for Magic Kingdom, and I think that it's underwhelming considering how much buildup that Beyond Big Thunder has kind of garnered with Josh Giamaro sort of like hinting but not promising. You know what I'm saying? I think they got to go a little bigger than that, a little more unique.
And for me, and now I'm still very ecstatic that Encanto is, coming to Animal Kingdom. I think if they do it well, it can kind of mesh in with the South America's area. But at the same time, I think Encanto still would have done very well in Magic Kingdom for that Beyond Big Thunder alongside with Coco, because to Mickey Views' first analogy, that it would have been like a desert kind of land that would have segued from Big Thunder into Coco and Encanto. And I thought that would have worked really well. Now that they're removed from that, it's like, okay, well, what's going to be in the place of it? But I do also think too, why I do not think that the Cars and the Woody rumored ideas, because we're also looking at it through the perspective of Bruce Vaughn. And with Bruce Vaughn, that came in, and I'm for sure Iger paid a pretty penny to get him to come back for leaving NASA. So I don't see Bruce Vaughn coming back and saying, you know what, yeah, we're going to do an East Coast version of Radiator Springs Racers, and the Woody section that was take out of Toy Story Land is going to go in there. I can't foresee him doing that, because Bruce Vaughn for Destination D23, he was not happy. He was not happy of what he came back into.
Yeah, I had heard the same thing. What do you think potentially about it?
Yeah, I mean, I would, if I had my choice, I would prefer some non-IPs back there. I mean, Big Thunder's not an IP. I would prefer something more like original, but the reality is IPs. I get it. Coco could be good. You're right. I don't know if Pixar or Cars Land, Woody, I don't know if any of that will work. But I don't know. I'm excited for whatever is going to go back there. I just, again, what would be the timeline we're looking at? Because
really quick, not to interrupt, but you spoke of like non-IP. I think if they were to have gone a non-IP route, which we know Disney, they're not going to do that, but it's one of the international parks that has Grizzly Gulch, and I think that would have been an interesting kind of like segue into it, because then you would have like that Western kind of, but then you could also add in like that newer frontier that they kind of, and I forget which international park has the Grizzly Gulch section, but I thought if they were doing.
Is it Hong Kong, I believe?
Is it Hong Kong?
If I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I think it's Hong Kong.
Yeah. Grizzly Gulch.
Well, okay. So our son would love Radiator Springs. He'd the whole ride. He'd love that. He
just gotta go to Disneyland.
He loves cars. Now, if that fits,
But this is Disney. We're not doing this for the kids.
What am I thinking? You're right. Ridiculous of me. Well, like, I look at this, I'm like, okay, I agree. I think I look at Imagineering over the years, and one reason why I brought up Frontierland last week is like it's such a Walt-centered land. Walt loved the Frontier. Frontierland is such a connection to him, so I hate seeing things that have this connection to Walt be stripped away. And my whole thing was they would take away piece by piece of Frontierland until eventually it's either, like you were saying, a sliver, or it's just completely gone. Mm-hmm. I think Big Thunder is, it's like, well, you're not going to re-theme that because there's no reason to, and it's still insanely popular. I felt all along, and I don't know if you guys agree or anybody here agrees with me, I don't understand, given if they're going to go the IP route, the most popular IP to me that would still be a huge hit would be Arendelle, to do something in Magic Kingdom like they're doing over in Japan, in Tokyo. And like, if you had now I'm not saying that fits, but I think we're kind of past Disney maybe fitting things into lands at this point. I can kind of make whatever work. But I think an Arendelle would be super popular. I think I've been an advocate for years for a Tangled attraction to come in.
Oh, yes, please.
And all these things. So I agree. Like, I think aspects of the Radiator Springs ride, while I think is cool, I would rather have the entire land. And I'm not a huge fan, though, of just this park has this one. Let's bring Tron over here. Let's bring this over here. Like, I kind of like the parks to have their own personality.
Which is why Radiator Springs should just stay in
California.
Agree.
And I agree, too. Cars is an older IP. It's not like, I don't believe they're probably going to make any new Cars movies.
Right.
I would prefer, and obviously, too, you got Toy Story that's already in Hollywood Studios. So not that Disney wouldn't do, the same IP in multiple parks, but it does seem thrown together. I would agree with you. I'd like to see Bruce Vaughn coming back, that there would be something else, and they're putting this big push on Imagineering. I would like to see more imagination. So if this is what it ends up being, and my whole thing circling back is, and this is obviously what it would be, is a rebuttal to Epic Universe of sorts. Is it enough? And I kind of lean, if it was this, now the stuff in Animal Kingdom potentially could have more of a draw than even this.
Right.
I don't know. I think when you're talking normies and they're not the Disney people, you're just looking at normal IPs and things like that. I think Nintendo is still such a draw for just kids and everyday people that grew up playing Nintendo and some of those things. So I don't know. Obviously, it's a rumor, but it's aspects of them like okay, but the aspects of it like the villains I think would be the most interesting.
Well, yeah, and I'm glad you brought that back up because going back to the villains, it's even if they were to hypothetically put in the cars and the Woody section, what kind of transition would that be from that to the villains? Like I don't. Yeah. To me, that's like going back to Toy Story Land into Galaxy's Edge all over again. Like it was what I would have done creatively with that, by the way, kind of going off topic a little bit, is to end Toy Story Land, but you have like this giant mint condition, like Darth Vader action figure, like in a box. So it's like, it's, you got the notion that Andy has a toy of Darth Vader in
you can't have Darth Vader in Galaxy's Edge though.
In a collection. that is true, but it segues into the Star Wars universe.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, or in the sake of it, let's just throw in Kylo Ren. God knows he's everywhere else.
It's like throw a fit outside the thing. No,
but anyway, but I think that would be a weird transition to move from Cars and Toy Story into villains. Now, where they would have the villains placed is actually behind the Haunted Mansion, which I thought that would be genius if they were to put the villains there to actually have an extra entranceway beyond the Haunted Mansion, not Big Thunder, not beyond Big Thunder, beyond the Haunted Mansion. That would be a great placement. But to your point of having Arendelle, it may not fit so well with Big Thunder, but it would be a good connection to the villains, which then the villains would be a good connection to Fantasyland, because all they're calling this is what is beyond Big Thunder. They never really said that it was going to be a connection to Big Thunder. This is just in the plot of land that is behind Big Thunder. It may have absolutely nothing to do with Big Thunder. It could be it could be moving from like west of Fantasyland. So it could be more of so you have Fantasyland, New Fantasyland, the villains, and then as you said, they could do something maybe like, because I know with Tokyo they have their stipulations of what they can use, but with the size and the plot of land, they need something like a Fantasy Springs kind of expansion.
I think it would be great. And I think that would play well into villains. But I think villains being the thing that people have talked about forever, and that is like you were saying, a twisted Fantasyland version. I think that would be the one that's the biggest. I mean, to me, just do a villains land back there and just do it.
Just do all villains. Just do all villains. Yeah, because then you're kind of secluding them to just like a minimum of like maybe 2 or 3 attractions. Which, by the way, what do you, if they do a villains, what would you both like to see? Like, do you see multiple attractions? Do you see one big E ticket, one D ticket?
I mean, that's the thing. If you did a big one, I mean, I would say at least 2. Typically, you go with 3, a big E-ticket. I think Gaston should get his redemption arc because he's the beast. They're the same story, but just one of them got a redemption arc. But anyways,
I don't know. Which villains do you want to see?
Probably Maleficent, I would say.
Oh, that's a good one.
That's a good one.
I don't know which would be the most popular. I mean, Jafar. Scar, he'd be a popular one to do a ride off of. Yeah.
Well, and Scar would be interesting too, because Scar could be your transition into like Frontierland, because the Shadowlands, that dry kind of landscape could get you into the deserty area of like the Big Thunder and all that. So
and you could put the villains back there, and it's like they've been secluded to this area of the park because they're villains, and there's some sort of spell, and they're under, and they're what I mean. You could paint a story.
Just call it like the Forbidden Forest.
Yeah, like you could.
I'm with you. Just like take the whole 25 acres and just do nothing but villains. Like,
people would love that.
Well, it's been rumored for a long time they would do a villains park. Now, I always argued I don't know if there's enough for an entire park of villains, but you for sure could do a whole land of it and just go all out with it.
And like you're right, the theme could be like all the villains were secluded to this area, like just away from everything else.
And then you could have a Fantasyland and Twisted Fantasyland war that breaks out, and whatever stories.
And is it just me, which we brought this up so many times, it is so frustrating that some of the biggest movies, especially during the Renaissance era of Disney animation, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, The Lion King, none of them have substantial big E-ticket attractions in the domestic parks. I don't understand it. For Aladdin, we get a magic carpet spinner ride that just like plopped in the center of Adventureland. that is like it's so god awful. It's like I can't. Well, it's like it makes me want to take like a giant toothpick and like just like pick it out and just like fling it somewhere.
Hey, we had the Aladdin parade back in the 90s. Remember that one?
I used to love like the individual parades when it would promote
the movie or whatever,
promote like the cross promotion for the movies.
Oh yeah, I loved it.
No, the IP slot. I mean, you could still do a Lion King ride to this day. It would be insanely popular. You could still do an Aladdin ride. Like there's a lot of these IPs that they're 20, 30 years old that would still be, insanely popular. That's why I'm always so baffled at Disney with Frozen in that each of those movies has made like $19 billion. They're like, well, we got this thing over here in Epcot, and you're like, okay, like I just feel like as IP heavy as they are, they would have capitalized by this point of it. But
yeah,
well, and every international park has it. It has an Arendelle, but not one domestic park, not yet, anyways.
And Animal Kingdom, you guys have the dinosaur attraction, which utilizes the same ride system in Jeeps as our Indiana Jones. That would be perfect for a Lion King attraction, like little safari Jeeps going through with the music blasting. I mean, that'd be great.
Yeah. Which we didn't hit on, which we talked about a little bit, but Animal Kingdom, the rumors there are similar with Indiana Jones, maybe.
Well, they already have the models, apparently, and no announcement.
I mean, we know things are happening because they basically gave us that sneak peek of like behind the curtain of, at the very least, it looks like Encanto with, well, either that or Coco.
It looks like Casita. Yeah.
It looks probably Casita. So we probably know that's going in there, and they will get the work permits for the construction, basically parking lot. But
that is true. Did they? I mean, we saw it on like the we call it Imagineering episode 1 with the models and everything. But did they actually officially confirm that that's what's going there?
They're all but confirmed. So the only thing we know confirmed is the permits that have been filed for a construction. Basically, they're going to build a parking lot for the construction of likely Dino Land stuff.
And based on the size and what they need, we can assume that it is for Dino Land. But again, nothing is confirmed.
I have a friend that can pull up permits, and he said he pulled up the permit, and the construction of that parking lot alone, they said it is almost 6 months or longer for the parking lot itself.
To make the parking lot.
But that one is confirmed. The parking lot is for sure, like for the construction stuff. So something's happening, which they've all but hinted at, especially after the proxy vote, is like all this rumor stuff. Like they're going to announce something at D23. It's just what it is going to be. And from what Braden says on Mickey Views, it's almost like it's this ongoing battle internally with Disney and what's going to go here and what's going to go there. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're not even 100% sure yet. They're just, sometimes Disney does that too. They leak stuff to see how people react to it. Like, well, maybe they like this, see what they like.
I think Disney will probably find out themselves the night of the presentation.
I mean, I've had thoughts for years on
it's like they'll be standing backstage. They'll have like the PowerPoint discs, and it's like, which one should we pick? Option A, B, or C?
It's just a lottery. They got a lottery girl. She's like, oh, all right, Encanto. You're like, oh, okay, cool.
Well, let's move on to talking about Diamaro.
George, you may like this topic because I have some thoughts on this one. So
sounds good. As we always say, there's a great big beautiful tomorrow.
I have a picture where it looks like me and Diamaro are best friends. Like post with people, like, what are you talking about? I talk to Diamaro all the time. So basically, he gave an interview. It was on
the CNBC.
CNBC.
Can I just read the?
Yeah, quote? I was gonna say the part. Okay. He said a lot of things, but the part that I just felt was. We'll talk about it. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So he was acknowledging the difficulties that Disney had with explaining the Galactic Star Cruiser. And he said, this is something that had never been done before. It was difficult to even explain to the public, and I think it was incredibly brave for us to move into this space. And this, to me, says Imagineering is still at its best today. Those learnings are best employed on the next experiences, which we haven't even announced yet. So he's just saying it was difficult to explain what it was, and that's why it didn't succeed.
Well, and that's your problem right there, Damaro. It was difficult to explain. And if you have to do these kind of explanations for something, then it wasn't really a solid idea, in my opinion.
And actually, Imagineer Kevin Rafferty has said that time and time again. Seasoned veteran of WDI says it in the Imagineering story on Disney Plus. Anyway, but that he says that when they were pitching for Toy Story Mania, he said all you need is like 1 or 2 sentences just to captivate your audience. It should be just 1 or 2 sentences to know exactly how to describe what you're talking about, and it's supposed to just be enough just to engage them. It's like, you know what, I want to know more, you know. So yeah, so if you have to go through a 10-page summary of what your concept is, it's like
go through a timeshare presentation for your attraction here. It's like, well, my thing, I get what he's trying to say, I understand, like, but my thing with Disney, just take an L. Just take it. Like, what do you look at with Tom Brady? These great head coaches, football players, when they lose a game, it's my fault. It's on me. They take all the blame. And when there's like, man, you had a great game. Oh, no, all my receivers, they did great. My O-line, they defer praise. They take the blame. Disney all the time is just like, well, people didn't get it. All right. It wasn't this. They always have this reason where I feel like they would get a lot.
And trust me, we got it. And what we got was a completely dunk tank. That's basically what we got.
I feel like they would get way more people being like, well, okay, if they would just be like, you know, like all he had to say was, we took a risk with this and we had this great idea, but, you know, it didn't really pan out. It didn't work very well. That the audience obviously didn't catch on, but we're learning from this and we're going to apply it to the next, you know, project we do. Because I still think Imagineering is the Imagineering of the days of Walt. That's all you got to say.
That's all you got to
say. When he says things like this, it's almost insulting. It's like, we understood what it was. The problem you had was it was more than a cruise for 2 days. And there's a lot of issues of reason.
And I think I brought this up to you guys when you were on our channel. I don't know if I did, but I think it's worth mentioning again. What I don't understand is you have the Galactic Star Cruiser, and the whole base storyline is Kylo Ren comes to the ship and he basically takes you as prisoner on this voyage. Okay, so then you go on one of your days into Galaxy's Edge. You're then going to go on an attraction where, again, you go on a ship, and lo and behold, you get kidnapped again by Kylo Ren. How can you not escape from Kylo Ren no matter what you do?
This man is just a menace face making people.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Not to get into all the reasons the Star Cruiser didn't work, because I think that could be an hour and a half long topic of its own. I want to believe, like, I guess my whole thing is, I want them to learn from the mistakes, but sometimes when they say things like this, I'm like, I don't think you're learning from the mistakes. Like, because you can't even just say, like, they presented this even when it closed down as if this was a win. I'm like, it didn't last a year or barely last.
Were you optimistic? Oh, sorry, OG. Really quick. Were you optimistic of, like, when they first announced this? Because honestly, right out of the gate, I had no type of notion that this thing was even going to work.
As soon as I saw the price. Nope.
Yeah. I had issues with it. I'm not the biggest fan. In fact, I'll just say that to be nicely about the sequel trilogy. I felt like being it in that storyline alone, the price, you were so limited to a group of people that A, not only would want to do it, but B, that could afford it. Right. And an experience like that is so, like, for me, I don't want to be doing stuff 2 days straight. I want to just relax sometimes. Well, like, I don't, you know.
And the people that did it were just like, man, it was just go, go, go the whole time. Just no time to relax. You can't even see sunlight because there's no windows.
I will say I've known 3 or 4 people that did it, and they all said they loved it, to their credit. I never experienced it, but I was never shocked. I kind of felt all along it would sell at the beginning, and then you're going to have this problem with bookings because that initial audience went, and it's not like it was a revolving storyline either. It was just the same story all the time, but it had its audience. It just wasn't it wasn't enough.
It was the cost and the interest in what it was, I think, was the 2 problems.
Yeah, exactly. And you're absolutely right about just Disney needs to take the L, right? It's like, even with, like, in this content creator space, like, if I watch, like, okay, for example, I watch a gentleman, Josh. He has a channel called Den of Nerds. I love his channel.
I know.
Yeah, he's fantastic. And this guy will make predictions and things like that, not in theme parks, but mostly like Marvel and Star Wars and things like that, right? He was a big advocate for, like, that Rebel Moon thing with Zack Snyder, the whole thing. But he'll make predictions, right? And if that prediction comes back and it doesn't pan out the way he predicted, he'll take the L. He'll be like, hey, guys, you know what? I thought it was going to go X, Y, and Z. It didn't. It went A, B, and C. I got it wrong. And it's like, you know what? I respect that. I respect that because you know what? Hey, you shot your shot. It didn't work out, but at least he comes out there and says, "Hey, you know, I'm going to take the L," and it just didn't work out the way I thought it was going to work out. I think you're right. I think it would go a long way if there was a little more candor with some of these Disney executives. Like, just come out there and just say, "Look, you know what? We took a big risk. It was a big risk. It was ambitious for sure. I think it cost like $1 billion or something like that. Something crazy." But it's like, just say, hey, it didn't, like you were saying, it just didn't resonate. It didn't land with audiences, and we just picked the pieces up, and we learned, and we go from there. Easy. Just take the L.
Yeah. It's a culture thing, I believe. It was something I just saw him say, and I was just sort of like, oh, come on, man.
So what would you guys say would be a good way to use that building, or what's the next steps? What would be something they could announce that would be comparable, better? Like, you know, what are they going to do with this building? Or
the rumors it was Guardians of the Galaxy, where they thought about putting in there something Marvel related before they decided to just nix it.
Because they're holding it off, I think, for tax purposes. They're not allowed to touch it.
I was going to say there was a tax loophole where they took a tax credit, so I was under the impression, at least for a period of time or whatever, they can't do anything with that building, at least for a bit. But
I believe it's a whole year, I think. Okay. Now, I believe it's either 2025 or 2026. They could then either utilize the building. Now, a lot of people are saying just turn it into a hotel, but the way that building was designed, it's not accommodating just for a simple, basic, normal hotel. But I don't know really what more you could really do with that building, not unless that you utilize it for a single attraction and just expand out Galaxy's Edge, which honestly, I think that they should have done that from the get-go. If you had all that space, just expand out Galaxy's Edge, because you were supposed to have a third attraction anyway. You were supposed to have a restaurant that was supposed to be tied to Oga's Cantina, which we didn't get. So it's like, why not do that? And besides, Hollywood Studios needs to expand out. It's the smallest out of the 4 parks. It's like, if you have that opportunity, take it.
Yeah, that's probably I agree. I don't know what you do with that building. It's so niche and unique to that experience alone. Although you could do an easy fix and just put Darth Vader in there. I think a lot of people would probably like that.
That's true. Yeah, and I think the problem you come across too when you go in there and you try to put something else in there, it's gonna feel like you went in there and you put something else in there. It's kind of like your local mall, right? When the Sears goes out of business and it becomes the Halloween store.
Yeah,
it's like, it was a Sears. You know what I'm saying?
I used to buy a lawnmower right there, and I can get a Scream mask. Yeah, no, I agree. I what they do will be interesting. That's actually a good idea, George. Expand it out and make it part of a big greater thing and just utilize the infrastructure. But we'll see. All right. Well, we're going to take a real quick pause here, and Jamie does have a poll time.
Poll time. All right, for my poll time this week, I asked the question in a series of best table service restaurants questions. What is the best table service restaurant at Hollywood Studios? Number 1, Hollywood Brown Derby got 39%. 50s Primetime Cafe was second with 25%. Sci-Fi Dine-In Theater was third with 20%. Then we have Mama Melrose with 6%. Roundup Rodeo Barbecue and Hollywood Vine tied for 4%. And then a few people said none of these or other. So it looks like Hollywood Brown Derby is the clear winner. So Jared, what of all these, like what's your favorite?
Well, as a classy gentleman myself, I many times already go to classy establishments.
Already.
So the Hollywood Brown Derby, for me, when I'm going to theme parks, I like to be amongst the people many times. And not necessarily just, around Ritz and fame, if you will. I sound weird just saying that. I like Brown Derby. It's not that it's not good. For me, the portion sizes are small. So I don't. That's one thing I don't like about it. It's good. I personally I really like Primetime and Sci-Fi because they're very unique. But I think I like Primetime food better.
Which is crazy because for years we talked about going there, and you said you didn't want to do it.
Well, it's the whole shtick, and I don't know. It was. We went there in the past 6 months, and it was. I'm not a huge fan of that shtick to begin with about however it is, but it is very well themed. The cast members are great, and the food is good. So I probably like that one. I think Roundup Rodeo Barbecue being as low as it is kind of does back up our initial thoughts on it. Well, now I know it's new.
It is. It's a year oldish.
But so. I feel like if it was just amazing, that it would be higher than 4%.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible. It's possible. But I mean, I didn't doubt that Braun Derby would be number one when I made the poll. I was like, yes, it's probably going to be number one.
Yeah. I'm a little surprised it was as high as it was.
I have nostalgia, though, from when I was a kid because we always ate there. The last thing we did was eat at Braun Derby before we went to the airport.
Of course. Me too. All the time. All the times I flew. Because I didn't fly the first time ever when I met you at all.
Oh, no way.
All the time as a kid. So, all right.
But anyway, so that was the poll for this week. So thank you, everybody, for participating in the poll this week. I will have a new one next week.
Yes, and if you want to be part of the next poll time, you can do that in two ways. You can join the Capture the Magic Facebook community, because Jimmy posts the polls in there. And I guess welcome to everybody. We had an influx of people. I think it was like a Peloton moms group or something. I don't really know. Somebody shared the group. A bunch of people came in. Welcome.
Hello.
I guess it was under good circumstances. I don't think anything crazy had happened. So there you go. So thank you for whoever shared and all that.
Yeah.
And also Jimmy posts those in the stories over on Instagram at Captain Magic. So you can catch them over there as well.
Yes.
Well, this discussion topic, I did some homework on.
Oh.
And I'm not the mathematician, so my math could be off, but Jimmy looked at it, and I think it's good. So we'll go off of that.
Okay.
So I saw an article that was written, casino.org. The article was basically at the end of the line for the Las Vegas monorail. And it was talking about how they're basically phasing out the monorail in Vegas due to cost, and they put some numbers out there. And one of the things that was interesting was they were talking about the company that makes the monorails, Bombardier, they sold off the rail business, so they no longer make monorails. And they had a little thing in here that said, the House of Mouse is in the same no-win situation as Las Vegas. It can buy an all-new monorail system, but would need to construct all new tracks. It's not impossible for a company to develop a new monorail to fit the existing ones, but nobody's rushing to step up to that very niche plate. And then it was just talking about the reason the monorail system is closing down in Vegas is due to operating costs. I think it's like $500,000 a year that they pay just to operate it, and they only have, I believe, 3 miles of monorail track. Which brought me to thinking about Disney World, because it was all but, as far as I can understand, it was almost all but announced Disney World was going to get a new monorail system around the 2018-2019 timeline. And Bob Gurr, the Imagineer, had even had a quote saying they were all but purchased. And then something happened. It was around the same time where we were going to get that theater in Magic Kingdom as well.
Was it the pandemic?
It was before the pandemic, but okay. I think it nixed.
Okay.
So it went away, but I was looking at the numbers, and if you've been to Disney World, the monorails, and George has joked about this, they have a smell to them. They're aged. They're since 1989.
Yeah.
It's interesting too how California, we got new monorails. I think it was around 2005, 2006-ish, I believe.
Oh wow!
I don't know if you've seen the Disneyland monorails they're new, but they kind of have a retro style to them.
Okay.
So we don't have the 89 version anymore. We did have similar ones to what you guys had, and they updated to these. So I was surprised at that time that they didn't go in there, because usually Disney has uniform monorails, between Disney World and Disneyland. At least they did. And it was kind of surprising to me that they never went all the way with both resorts. They only did Disneyland.
How many does Disneyland have? Like, how many trains do they have?
How many do we got? I think we got is it 4, George?
I think it's 4.
I believe it's like 4. We don't have that many.
Like a rotation. Now with Walt Disney World, I'm trying to remember how many they.
I can tell you.
I think it was like a dozen.
Yeah.
So
like that.
Originally it was 14, and then the 2 in the accident that happened in like 2009, and then they took them off. So now there's 12.
So there's 12.
Yeah. So okay, do a little math here. So there's no numbers about how much Disney paid in 1989, at least that I could find, for the monorails that they replaced. The only numbers we can go off of is when Disney World was originally built. They spent $1 to $1.2 million per train, but the total cost of the entire monorail system was $3.5 million per mile. So the whole thing was around $23 million to build it
in 1970.
So if we use inflation, accounting for all those things like that, and we look at, let's say they buy 12 more. In today's numbers, to replace the current fleet of 12 trains, it would cost basically $115 million. Now, the other issue, like the article talked about, was the current trains that are built don't fit Disney World's tracks. So if they had to rebuild those tracks, that would bring the total cost for the replacing of 14.7 miles of track to be roughly $410 million. So if you replace trains and track, you're talking $525 million, which is overbuilt. Now, I think they would probably go the ways of retrofitting the trains onto the current tracks, would be my guess. Yeah. But how much that would cost, I have zero clue how to find that. So let's just say it's $300 million. It's $400 million in that ballpark to replace the monorail system. So just looking around this. And again, all we can go off of is the initial numbers because Disney didn't release numbers about the gondola system.
Right.
So do we think, and now we're thinking, extrapolating here, they've been pieced together over the years. Do you think Disney will spend that money to replace the monorails? Because I kind of feel like they may not, but at the same time, I can see the argument where they may be forced to do it because of the brand of it being Disney World is so synonymous with monorails. And if you get rid of those, what does that do to people's just first thoughts?
Exactly. The way that the resort is kind of built, they built the monorail at the time when the resort was being fleshed out with the Magic Kingdom and Epcot and the hotels around it. So yeah, that would be a very challenging way, especially for people in the what we call like the Magic Kingdom like loop, if you're in one of those hotels, because you get that upscale premium that you could just jump on the monorail, whether you're at the Polynesian, at the Contemporary, at the Grand Floridian. You could just hop on a monorail, go over to Magic Kingdom, or get off at the Transportation and Ticket Center, hop on another monorail to Epcot and what have you. So yeah, that would be very a hindrance, I think, if they were to just kind of like let it fall by the wayside. But I'll actually take it a little bit further since we're doing math, one of my favorite topics. Yeah, okay. But take the $60 billion investment. Now, 30% of that $60 billion is going to go for tech and maintenance. So that roughly gives about $18 billion that's going to be put towards the tech and maintenance. So, I mean, with 18 billion, it's very possible if they, how much did you say it would, what was the number?
If it was tracks and train, it would basically be 525 mil to replace.
Okay. So they may pull that from the 18 bill.
They could.
That's true.
My whole thinking on it was, well, and if you look at the gondola, and this is just going off of other systems that were similar built to the Skyliner, it's the guesstimate there that probably cost Disney $112 million to build the Skyliner system in that range. So you're talking something a fraction of the cost. I'm just curious if you look like, say, Epic Universe, that whole park cost $1 billion. Does Disney want to put that much money into something that doesn't have a direct ROI? But I think the only reason they would potentially do it would be the unknown of they're so synonymous with Disney, they may be forced to do it. Because what would people do if you just said, oh, yeah, and then like, what do you do with the Contemporary? You know, what do you do? Like, have the gondola system just go through there, like roughly go through? I feel like it just wouldn't fit.
It's real slow.
What they built. And it's funny because Universal doesn't have this type of problem. Like Disney, monorails are very innovative. Walt kind of, I don't know if Walt, he didn't create them, but I think
he didn't create them. It was back in like the 30s or 40s that there was like a type of style. So he left it up to Bob Gurr, and Bob Gurr kind of made it futuristic. So they were kind of like just like a trolley train type of thing. But Bob Gurr was the one that kind of gave it like that spaceship kind of front with the fins that come down that hide the track and what have you. That was all Bob Gurr. But to your statement towards just the Skyliner. Now, I personally love the Skyliner. I could ride that thing all day. However, now this could be to the argument where the monorail is high up, on a track. However, when you're in the monorail, there are people that, have like a type of fear of heights or what have you, or, being like boxed in. But on a monorail, they're perfectly fine because they don't necessarily have to like look up. But when you're in that Skyliner, in like that box, and you're kind of looking out, and you're going across on a cable.
Yep. And I'm the same way.
As long as the thing doesn't stop, and the minute it stops, I'm just like,
I'm very claustrophobic. Like I don't like elevators, and so, like I'm with you. Like I'm good in there, but if it stops and we don't know when it's going to start up again, the panic will set in, yeah, I wouldn't. And you're right. Monorails are much more like 4-quadrant. Like everyone can kind of do it. Like the gondolas feel a little bit more thrilling and a little bit more like people are going to have issues, definitely issues.
My issue with it would be not the fact of it stopping, because this would just be my luck. I would get stuck on with somebody that like had like 2 Casey Corner hot dogs and like has to like,
you got to establish a corner.
Exactly. And it's like, I'd be stuck on there and I'm like, just get me off of this thing, please.
Like my thing is I'm fine, but when it stops and it just does that free swinging, I'm just like, oh, okay. And our daughter will be like, Daddy, are you okay? Like, Daddy's fine. Daddy's just going to read some stuff on his phone real quick and try not to look outside the window. But it's an interesting topic, because the more I talk about it, the more, and I proposed this to our Club 32 group, and I put a poll up. Do you think Disney will replace them? And everybody said no. It's an interesting thing of like, I think 10 years ago, most people would have said yes. I think the question I think comes into modern day Disney. Do they do it? And that's the question where you just go, 10 years ago, I would have said, yeah. Now I'm like, I don't know. The more I talk about it, the more I'm like, man, I don't know if they would take that risk of if they just think, oh yeah, we're just going to put, I mean, your only other example would be a Skyliner type system.
Yeah. I mean, the smart way for them to do it, because like it is a lot of money. If I was Disney, if I was running the show, which I'm obviously not, but if I was, what I would do is I would do it in phases and spread it out over as many fiscal, and that fans are going to hate this because, but financially it might make the most sense. Like, you maybe you pull one train off, put one train on. 6-8 months later, you pull one off, put a new one on, and you do it through phases over like a multi-year, refurb thing, over like maybe 4 or 5 years. So you spread that financial burden over multiple fiscal periods, as opposed to dropping the whole thing at once.
Yeah, I think the other wrinkle to it, and the article went into it. It's not Bombardier. What's the company called?
Bombardier.
Okay,
I think. Bombardier
sounds better, but okay.
Bombardier.
They were sold off, so it's unknown of this new company. I have no clue if they're still making them even. So that's the other thing, is the company that was always making them is no longer doing that now. It's an interesting thing. I mean, I would like to think they would redo it, but you're like, they would probably spread it out much like if they do the Beyond Magic Kingdom. When's that done? 2030? Because they tend to just take 5 years plus for a lot of construction.
But like George was saying, if they use part of that 60 billion,
they could
toward the monorail. I mean, okay, great.
My whole thinking was just simply it's something they would spend money on that doesn't have a direct ROI, but it has a potential cost. I guess that would be your ROI, would be maintaining your brand identity and not having that massive potential hit on the, I guess you would just say it's a brand thing, brand identity, brand awareness of what they're synonymous with. I mean, Disney World people are synonymous with getting on the monorail and going places.
But think about if they didn't do the monorail again, or didn't like the trains just stopped working, or they just didn't use it anymore. Like the track goes inside Epcot. Would they have to just bulldoze it all in Epcot? Would it just stand there abandoned?
There's a lot
probably stand there abandoned.
And I think people have already seen enough of the construction walls at Epcot to see anymore. You know?
And here's the other thing too, though. It's also a selling point for a lot of these hotels.
Yes.
Like the Contemporary, it drops you off right there.
Right, it goes through it. So I mean,
it goes through it.
I mean, the more I talk about it, the more I think that they'll probably have to pony up the money to do it. I just think they're gonna just. It's like they're just gonna tight fist it, hand it over because they don't want to. But it's interesting. I just saw that article and I saw some numbers they put up there, and I was just like, how much would it cost? And I was like, oh, that's a lot of money. So I don't know if Disney will hear this or not, but there you go. We did some math for you. I wouldn't trust my math though. I would get it double checked. That was me. But all right. Well, I think that's going to do it for the show. So thank you to Orange Grove 55 and George the Italiano for coming on and chatting with us. Greatly appreciate it. It's always a good time. So again, tell everybody where they can find you, check you out, and everything like that.
Yeah, thanks for having us on. Really good time talking shop with both of you. It was really fun. You can find me and this guy down here, the Italiano, at Orange Grove 55 on YouTube, where we talk all about theme parks, movies, nerdy stuff. You know what I'm saying? Corporate side, all that good stuff. Orange Grove 55. Also on Twitter, pretty active on there, Orange Grove 55, and Instagram, Orange Grove 55. And again, thank you both for having us on. It was really, really fun time.
And you could also find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Disney George. You could also find me on Instagram under the Disney Italiano. And as OG said, you can find me on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
There it is.
Well, thank you guys for being on. It was again, great time, good conversation, and we will have you guys on again soon. So
thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, that's going to do it for the show. But before we go, be sure to check out us on social media at Captain Magic everywhere except for over on TikTok. We are at Capture the Magic. And if you want even more content, be sure to check out some of the other shows on the network. So we have the CTM Universal Show where we talk about Universal Studios, and that's twice a month. And Jamie has Trip Tales, which is her trip report show. And the next one there is coming out on Monday. And that's a great resource if you got a trip coming up and you want to hear, firsthand from people who just went on trips. They know they're going, so they take a lot of notes, and it's a good in-depth breakdown there.
And she provided a lot of tips, like specifically made sure to say, okay, this is a tip. So
okay,
that'll be good.
There you go. And of course, if you want even more content, Club 32, ctmvip.com is where you go for that. And one thing I do want to say is the apparel end of things has moved officially. It's on its own site now, stripped away from the CTM podcast website. It is at its own website now, ctmapparelco.com. So going forward, that is where all the apparel, all the shirts will be outside of like the show shirts and hats and Club 32 stuff and everything like that. So when your Club 32 members will get a monthly promo code they can use for get the discounts and everything like that. So going forward, that is where it will be. I think it'll work out much better having those things separated. And the site, the main podcast site, it was getting very behemoth size like, given all the podcast episodes we have, the articles, and then the shop continually growing and everything like that. So I figured let's just strip it off and do that. So that is now done. So again, going forward, it'll be ctmapparelco.com where you go for all the CTM apparel stuff. So, all right. Thank you, everybody, for listening and or watching. And thank you, Jamie, for joining us.
Thank you.
And as Jamie always likes to say,
we will see you in the parks.
Bye.